Uh, so welcome everybody to Project Wild's webinar, first one of the year that we're hosting. And this one is focusing on storytelling from a cultural perspective. And I do have a presentation I would like to show folks before we get started. So this is the webinar that we're hosting today, featuring Moana McAdams and Brad Wagner, both children's book authors that focus on getting kids outdoors or focus on wildlife, and also, but from a cultural perspective. I do want to say thank you very much to NAAWE, the North American Association for Environmental Education, and EPA, who's provided funding that allowed us to do this webinar. And it's part of a partnership that we have with them for a grant called EE360+. My name is Elena Takaki. I'm the director of Project Wild, and I work at the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. And shortly, my colleague Mark Lefebvre will be joining me as well. He's also having some technical difficulties, so he'll join us in just a little bit. And he's going to help me monitor the Q&A. So if at any point during this presentation you have any questions, please put it down in the Q&A box. And at this point, I would like to introduce our guest speakers. First I'll introduce Moana McAdams. I've known Moana personally for a while, a number of years already. She and I both dance hula in the DC metro area. So Moana is from Hawaii, and she is an amazing storyteller. Not only has she written books, but she works on some comics, and as she mentioned earlier, she has a podcast, and she does a lot of different things and is working on a lot of different projects, all with the aim of sharing Pacific Island culture. And she has some other projects in the queue as well, which I hope she'll tell you about. And then Brad is a children's book author, and he's part of the Gideon, he lives on in Gideon on the Cherokee Nation Reservation with his wife, Tanya, and his mother, Judy, and he's published 4 books. I have 2 of them right here, The First Fire, A Cherokee Story, and The Land of the Great Turtles. And he has a couple of more books coming out, which I hope he'll tell you about. And I will also put some links to his website in the chat as well. With that, I would like to hand it over to Moana. And if you give me just a second, I will call up your presentation.
Thank you so much. Aloha, everybody. Mahalo for joining us today. It's a pleasure to be here. As Elena brings that up, we know how technology is in this virtual world these days. No matter how much we prepare, something is inevitably happen. So, again, aloha, o Moana ku'ui noa. My name is Moana, and I am originally from the islands of Hawaii, specifically the island of Kauai. And here on this slide, this is just to give you guys a sense of all of the different hats that I wear. When people ask me who I am, it's a tough question to answer because I see myself in a lot of different dimensions. And so I feel like it's important to honor the different aspects of my life, because all of these things are what make me who I am today. The first one being He Hawaii Au, which means that I am Hawaiian. The next couple words, Kaikamahine, Kaikua Ana, Vahine, and Anake, those are my family roles as a daughter, a sister, a wife, and an aunt to my nieces and nephews. And And I also see myself as a community leader, here out here doing this work, telling stories, and helping to uplift the views, perspectives, and voices of Pacific Islander peoples all over the world. I do this as a podcaster, a cultural consultant, a publisher for my book series and our comics, as well as, running a business as an entrepreneur. You can go to the next one, Elena. Thanks. So I wanted to share this thought here, because I feel like stories are so important. And I'll pronounce it because I know people are maybe saying, like, what does that mean? He mana ko ka'olelo. And that means power is in the language, and the words that we use have power. So I always like to be careful about when I write, when I approach storytelling. Because for me, I focus my stories on things that are inspired by people that I know, the culture that I represent. I definitely take pride, and great care in the words that I use for my stories, because these are the things that last. You know, Stories are just such an integral part to who we are. It's a part of our identity. It's a part of us honoring our ancestors, the people who have come before us, and keeping them close to us, keeping their memory alive and honoring everything that they have done to help us, be here today. So for me, at the core of why I write stories is my ohana. And Elena, you can move to the next one. So ohana, many of you have probably heard this word. It was made popular on the mainstream. If you have not been to Hawaii, you may have heard it in Disney's Lilo and Stitch animated film back in the 90s. But for me, ohana, it does mean family. And that is a huge part of why I write. Um, as a child, I was a huge fan of the library. Like, the library was my favorite place. It was, where I could go to have adventures without really going anywhere. And it was just, something that, my sister and I, that's how we spent time. My mother was a bookworm, and she was always talking to us about books and encouraging us to read. Um, and my father, he is a fisherman. And so that's kind of where, for today, I would like to talk about him because he, living in Hawaii, you cannot help but be in connection with the ocean. It is a huge central part of our culture. And it's also, that's what my name means in the Hawaiian language. So he was a fisherman, and he was my best friend. He was my hero, really. And so he played a huge part in encouraging me to tell my stories, because I actually watched him kind of not tell his stories. Like, he had so many stories, and I wish, today, if he could be here, that we could share that. But so that's part of the reason why I started writing too. I wanted to help tell his stories, at least the things that I remember about his life, and help other people to understand who he was, and the things that he taught me today. So the first book I ever wrote, that Elena talked about, is Fishing Day with Papa Ray, Ray being my father. And this book is really special to me, obviously, because it's for him. But it was something that helped me to navigate my grief after he had passed on. It was probably one of the hardest things in my life to lose him, because he was my hero. He was someone that I looked up to all throughout my life. But it was therapeutic. It was a pathway that I needed to help navigate that rough time in my life. My father was a fisherman. He fished on the shore. He did net fishing. Everything I learned about fishing, I learned from him. And the pages of this story are inspired by some of our favorite memories: fishing, during our childhood. And some of my favorite pages in here are just like the memories that, live in my head. And if I could share it with, with others, the fun that comes with fishing. Um, and in the back there, you might see a fin out of the water. And so that's my way of highlighting sharks in a positive way, because a lot of what we see are sharks being portrayed as a predator. But when you look at the facts, that's not really the case. And so for Hawaiian people, there's a different aspect to the way we view the environment around us, the creatures who live, alongside us, and the roles that they play in the environment. Hawaiians lived off the land, and the fishermen were a huge part of it. In our ahupua'a, which is essentially a land division system, the fishermen played a huge role in feeding the community. And so they're an integral part of the community, and it's another reason why I wanted to write this book. My second book is this like Shadows of the Ancient. And so while Fishing in Day is a story about aloha and kindness, Shadows of the Ancient is the words there got a little messed up on the slide, sorry. But Vivo Ole, and Vivo Ole means bravery. So this particular story is about bravery and courage. And while it is a children's book, I view it as an all ages story, because no matter how old or young we may be, everyone needs reminders about bravery, and kind of help and encouragement through through difficult times that we face. And so this is a fun story that I put out there into the world. And last year we actually won the Children's Book International Award in a multicultural category. So we were really excited and honored for this. I have a wonderful artist who works alongside me in this story. And the next book is Journey to Ikua. And this book is actually coming out this year. It's actually on a ship right now. This particular story is about legacy, discovery, and kind of bringing our ancestors along with us. This one here is the way I kind of approach this story is what would happen if the legends and the myths and the folklore of our cultures came alive, and what would that be like through a child's eyes. So Journey to Ikua is a continuation from Shadows of the Ancient, and so this is an ongoing series that I'm really excited to be working on. It's really fun for me, and it helps me to be a kid again, so I really enjoy it. The next slide really just talks to another piece of why I do this. Everyone has a role in our community, and for me, because I didn't see a lot of stories that reflected, me as a child, that was one of the main reasons for me wanting to write and tell stories. And so being here in the classroom, engaging with the children, inspiring the kids that come from my own community and other communities, like they get to experience a little bit of my childhood. And as I mentioned earlier, I get to introduce them to my dad and the lessons that, he taught me, and really encourage these kids too, to share their stories, to think and consider about writing, and help them see the possibilities of what that could do for them. I didn't think that I'd be writing. If you asked me when I was a kid, I probably would not have said writing, but here I am. And so it's an honor for me to honor my community in this way. And my writing career has, opened doors for me. I am currently working on the Lilo and Stitch comic book series. It's currently a monthly series that's coming out all throughout 2024. So if you have a comic book shop near you, you might want to check it out. I am involved in this project as a developmental editor and a cultural consultant. So Greg Pak is the main writer on the series, but I get to influence the story and really deepen the cultural understanding of the nuances that I think are missed when you do not have indigenous people, authors, creatives involved in the production, whether it be comic books, film, TV series, all of those things. Our views and our people, we need to be in those influential positions, whether it's, writing or in the background, whether it's in the writing room, on the production team. And so this is something that I'm really happy to be doing. And there's more projects coming that I can't yet talk about, but this wouldn't have been possible if we weren't already writing and self-publishing our own series. And then the last one, I think just one. This is just a thank you slide, for everyone who has helped me along this journey. As I said, the community is a huge, important component. And A'ohehana Nui Ke Alu'ia essentially captures, that essence from our community that many hands make light work. None of this could be done by myself. I'm just, the one leading the way. I think that might be the last one. Oh, one last one, sorry. And this one here is about my podcast. So now that I, have been writing for a while, the podcast is something that I created to create a space for other people to tell their stories. We get to engage on a number of different topics. Most of them cultural, but we also have a leadership segment that we offer professional development and leadership content. And we also have a pop culture segment where we talk about what's new, the new movies and TV shows, our thoughts on them, where they may have gotten things right, where they may have missed a step. And then also we do we provide media coverage at comic book conventions and try to highlight the voices from those in the independent scene. So it's just an extension of our storytelling, and I'm really happy that I get to encourage people to be brave and to tell their stories too. And I believe
One more slide.
Oh, okay. And so this is just my closing slide. My core message is really that our story matters, and please be brave enough to tell your story, because sometimes I sit back and think about all the stories that never get told because people just don't feel brave enough to do it, or empowered, or there's always that negative self-talk that happens in your head. I hope people can overcome them in some way. These are just some of the highlights that we've been able to do. I mentioned the award earlier. We've raised a lot of funding on Kickstarter because we do self-publish. We self-published our original series. And a huge part of our mission is putting resources back into the schools. So we donate books into the schools in Hawaii, and we've done in some parts of the West Coast as well. So if you'd like to check me out and the other work that I do, feel free to scan that QR code. It'll take you to my site, and you can feel free to reach out to me that way. Thank you guys so much. Sorry I went a little long.
Well, thank you so much, Moana. We will definitely look forward to the comic book. My dog's name is Lilo, and in the beginning when I first got her, I think she acted more like Stitch, but now she's very, very sweet and loving dog sitting right next to me here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So now I would like to introduce Brad Wagnon. And he's gonna talk to us a little bit about his story process too, and some of the books that he's published as well. Brad, thank you.
Actually, I'm not going to follow that, so I'm just going to say, see everybody.
Okay.
That's very inspiring to hear what you've done, Moana, and your passion for your culture. And I'd like to say I have a similar story. It is similar in some ways, but I've had a little bit of success as far as storytelling and authoring children's books goes. Like Moana, I started out with self-publishing a book back in 2015 with a friend of mine as the illustrator. Alex Stevenson is a good friend of mine that also works for the Cherokee Nation. And we decided, it's actually Alex's idea, to try to share some of our Cherokee stories as children's books. And so he did all the the illustration, and I provided what I thought was a good place to start as far as telling Cherokee stories with our creation story, and that story is called How the World Was Made. And so we did How the World Was Made in 2015, self-published it, and it did pretty well for our first book, for a self-published book. A lot of people around here got a hold of it. I live close to Tahlequah, Oklahoma, which is our capital for the Cherokee Nation. And so a lot of people around here got it, and we decided to do another one. And for that second book, we decided that we definitely wanted to try to get someone to publish it other than us, and do a little bit of the promotion and different things like that for us. And so we did, and that book is the one that Elena has, The Land of the Great Turtles. And that story is a story that's was very special to me and very special to everybody that's Cherokee, because for who knows how long, thousands and thousands of years, that story had only been passed down through oral tradition. And besides some notes that I had taken from listening to beloved elder whose name was Benny Smith, Chigeisa. That's what we say when somebody has passed on. Listened to him for hours and hours, and that was one of the stories he told. And he said something to the group that I was in. He said that he was giving this story to us, and that it was up to us to make sure that it was passed along, that it was kept alive. And so I, after a lot of thought, a lot of talking to elders and talking to people within my tribe that I respect, I decided to go ahead and write down my version from my notes that I had taken from Benny's talk on the Land of the Great Turtles. And so we did that, and Alex, of course, helped me by illustrating it again and did a wonderful job. His illustrations are what brought the story to life, and we did that, and we published that book with a publisher called Rowe Publishing out of Tennessee, and it did a little bit better than the first one because we had some help with promotion. And the Land of the Great Turtles talks about where we came from, and so I thought that it was a fitting second book after our creation story. The Land of the Great Turtles is what we call an origin story that talks about where we came from. And as I said, it had never been written down before to my knowledge, and so this was the first time. Moving along, we decided that we wanted to do a third book, and we did the first Fire with a company, Native Voices Books, out of Tennessee, and it did very, very well for us and for Native Voices Books. And so they were gracious enough to ask if they could have the opportunity to republish our first two books. And of course, we said yes. And while we were doing that, we decided that we wanted to do something that we had really wanted to do since the very beginning, which was include the Cherokee language in the republished versions of those books. And so How the World Was Made and The Land of the Great Turtles was republished with Cherokee and English as a dual language book. My good friend Betty Frog, who is a first language Cherokee speaker and a teacher at our Cherokee immersion school, and just also a Cherokee National Treasure, which is the honor that we give people who are our traditional artists in our tribe, in our nation. She's a national treasure for basket weaving. She graciously translated those two stories into Cherokee for us. I have a little bit of understanding of the Cherokee language, but one of the things that I want to talk about and make sure I touched on is the importance of our language and using our language when we tell our stories. Our language is a language that is struggling to survive. We have around somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 speakers of the Cherokee language today. We're trying to create more speakers. We have an immersion school all the way from pre-K, even the little ones, the 3 and 4 year olds, have language in their daycares all the way through an adult immersion program. So the Cherokee language is hopefully on its way back up, and we wanted to make sure that we included that in the stories that we're writing and publishing, and so we did that. And that happened in 2020. And as everybody knows, the world kind of changed in 2020, and we had this huge plan to do book signings and do this huge promotion for these republished versions in Cherokee and English of our first two books. And of course, that didn't really that didn't really pan out. But we did finally get to do that in 2022. After some of the pandemic had waned, we got to do some book signings at our Cherokee National Holiday, which is our celebration of our nation, of the Cherokee Nation. So we got to do that, and so those books have done really, really well. We're working on another book. Alex and I, my friend that I mentioned, we're working on a book that's called Rabbit's Song. We're actually looking for a publisher for that book right as we speak. And I'm also doing some other projects. I was telling Elena right before we got on that I finally got a hard copy of a Cherokee history book that I did for Saunders Book Publishing, Beach Street Books out of Canada. It's called Cherokee, the People and the Nation. And I'm not exactly sure how people in other countries will get it besides Canada, but I do know that it's out there. If you search my name, Brad Wagnon, and Cherokee, the People and the Nation, you should be able to find that book. My next project that I'm really excited about will be releasing in June with Native Voices Books, and I partnered with a great Cherokee artist for this project. And this project is actually a Cherokee syllabary book, which is our language, our way that we write the Cherokee language. So Cherokee syllabary was invented by a man named Sequoyah, and what we have done is we have basically illuminated several characters. If anybody's familiar with old illuminated manuscripts, we have illuminated several characters out of the Cherokee syllabary, and it's going to be a beautiful book as well as a learning tool for people to learn the Cherokee language. So we're really excited about that. That's releasing in June. I'm not sure how much time I have. Lena, you'll tell me.
That's probably about all the time we have.
Probably about it.
Clearly,
Probably
I
about
have
it.
not allocated enough time for this discussion, and there are a lot of questions in the chat. I think though, if we could just take time to answer one question, and then perhaps what I could do is email with Brad and Moana some of the other questions that we have posted here. And then they could respond via email, and then I can share that with all of the participants. Does that sound okay? One of the biggest questions we had for both Brad and Moana was, how do we share the stories of your cultures or of other cultures, and I know this is just your perspective, without appropriating those stories?
I can go first. So
Go
I
ahead.
think a big part of it is empowering and investing in the indigenous storytellers who are already working, right? Like So for me, I appreciate these opportunities that are coming now, because it still gives us a role. And that role is important because when you remove the Indigenous person from the story, it doesn't have the same meaning, it doesn't have the same power. And it's really important that we keep that perspective centered. Otherwise, it gets lost in a lot of the other types of stories that are already out there. And I'm not discounting those. I'm just saying that it's very important to have these diverse perspectives, whether it's as adults and especially as children too, because it's important for us to understand the different cultures and peoples that make up this world. Like this is real life. And every culture has so many special things. And it's really important for us to honor that.
Brad, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have a few. Of course, as Moana said, make sure you're supporting those native artists and creators that are out there making things that reflect the true stories of their culture. And I think we talked about this a few days ago when we had our pre-webinar discussion. I just want to stress the importance of building relationships with the native people, the indigenous people that live in your area, the people whose stories you're wanting to tell. Invite them to your classroom, invite them to the place where you're going to tell those stories. Let them tell the story, and if they can't be there, at least be sure that you're getting the story directly from someone from that culture. And as I said, that requires probably building a relationship with those people. So it takes a little bit of work, I guess I should say, to get those stories and to share them in the correct manner. So that would be my advice.
Thank you very much. Moana and Brad, I want to be respectful of your time, and we're just a couple minutes over, but thank you both for being a part of this discussion. Clearly, I didn't allocate enough time, but hopefully we can have you back in the near future. For those of you attending, if your question wasn't answered, I'll work with Moana and Brad to get them answered, and I'll send an email out along with a link to this recording as well. And with that, thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time and hope to see you in the near future.
Mahalo, everyone. Take care.
Hello, thank you.
Ahui ho.